educate yourself on what is your body going through throughout the menstrual cycle so that you can be empowered with, what to do. So ultimately, you can break down your menstrual cycle into either two phases, the follicular, which is the first half, or the luteal, the second half. You can go a little further and break those down into further phases to make a total of four. But that luteal phase is where we do see the most fluctuations. The second half of your cycle is where you see the most fluctuations in hormones, notably estrogen and progesterone. Now, progesterone specifically is what we call a little bit more of a catabolic hormone, one that causes some breakdown. And because of that, our body doesn't recover as well. And as you know this information, and as you start to track your cycle, you may start to notice this, that, oh, yeah, that second half of my phase, or the 1 or 2 weeks before my period comes, is when I do feel more sore. I do feel more tired. I do feel like I need to sleep in more. I do feel like when I hit the gym, like I'm just not hitting my PRs. I'm not lifting the heaviest. I'm not running the fastest. And a lot of that has to do with our higher progesterone. Now, I don't want to paint progesterone to be, the bad one, because it's also super important, and it works in conjunction with estrogen, which is an anabolic hormone that helps you build things. So you need both, and you need a balance of both. But with that being said, if you have a little more breakdown happening because of high progesterone in your luteal phase, this is why maybe we're at a slightly higher risk of injury during that phase, because our body's a little more broken down. Well, what do we do about that? You give yourself the proper recovery tools to build yourself back up. So that's proper sleep, first and foremost. That's also focusing on hydration to make sure that you are delivering nutrients to your body, that your joints and tendons and ligaments are well lubricated. And then it's focusing massively on protein during your luteal phase, not just protein throughout your entire day, that's important, but protein specifically post workout to really help with that recovery. I think another nutrient I mentioned earlier is like omega-3s for reducing inflammation. So I think a little extra focus on anti-inflammatories and antioxidants that help your body repair and recover during this luteal phase would be really important too. So I think that's kind of like the overarching. And then to be a little more specific for your listeners, when I hit on that protein piece, I think there's a lot of stuff on the internet to just say, yeah, like protein post workout, or, we have that 20 grams of protein is like this gold standard. Well, definitely hit your 20 grams post workout. You might even need a little bit more, during this phase. Why not go for 25? Why not go for 30 grams of protein? Just really optimize your post workout fueling and protein recovery. And same thing with that antioxidants and anti-inflammatories is, this is something that's healthy all the time to do. So I wouldn't stop you from eating blueberries, when during your follicular phase either, but it's just something of like, what, can I look up some recipes that are antioxidant or anti-inflammatory boosting? Or can I make sure, like, if you like fish, great, have all the fish, but maybe during your luteal phase, eat salmon specifically for those omega-3s. Buy some canned salmon packets instead of just canned tuna. Little things like that to just bring a little more focus or emphasis on.
What about carbohydrate needs during the luteal phase? Should they be doubling them or upping them a little bit to kind of combat that fatigue?
Yes, this carbohydrates in the luteal phase get a little bit confusing. Okay. First and foremost, to combat that fatigue, I'll say yes. And this is why a lot of people, even women, have said for years, like, oh, I'm craving sugar when you PMS, we're craving sugar and sweets. And a lot of that is actually because we are, during our luteal phase, we're actually struggling to tap into our stored carbohydrates. So we all have stored energy on our body. And carbohydrates are in the form of stored glycogen in our muscles and in our liver. And during that luteal phase, it's a little harder for us to tap into our stored energy, which means we need more readily available energy. So it is okay, and probably a good thing for you to have a few more frequent snacks when you're PMSing that might help keep your blood sugar up and your energy levels up. And it is good and okay to have those snacks be carbohydrate snacks. And if anything, too, that whole kind of craving concept that I have air quotes around, um, it might even be a good thing to know to bring that focus on. I want to intentionally have carbohydrates at breakfast, at snack, at lunch, so that I don't have super intense cravings because my body's struggling to tap into the stored carbs. Did that make sense, Erica?
Yeah, I learned something new. That's super helpful. So I'm sure everyone gained something from that. And I'm really glad we're talking about this because when I saw that comment in the group, it was just frustrating because there's just not enough education or even other solutions being provided. And I'm just glad you gave solutions. And the whole, oh well, menstrual cycle might leave them at a greater ACL risk, that's really defeating. And a female athlete can't control that. She's going to get her menstrual cycle. So what can we do about it? How can we tweak nutrition? So thank you so much for sharing that. And we're not saying oral contraceptives aren't an option. I'm not going to speak on that, but there needs to also be other options given.
Well, and what I always say about oral contraceptives is birth control is for birth control purposes. And so if that's a choice that you make, and I've made that in my life as well, like that's perfectly fine. We have to make health choices individually, but birth control is for birth control. Birth control is not for preventing ACL.